In this episode of Smalls That Sell, we are going to be breaking down some hot and trending items from the big box stores and even one from my personal collection. When it comes down to it, this series is all about profit margins, finding those items that we can build to maximize our profit margins. As an example, I've already been getting a ton of feedback from people making planters already this year and not being able to make them fast enough. Many have several $1,000s in orders and are killing it with projects just like this. Okay, so for this first one, we're actually going to be hacking or breaking down one of my latest projects. My wife had asked me if I would build something for our laundry room that would hold laundry baskets. Now, I'd seen different styles of basket holders in the past and really wasn't a big fan of them. So this is what I came up with. So our house has a farmhouse rustic look, so I decided to make this basket holder to resemble a giant crate. And again, I did not record a video on making this, but I did share some pictures of the build with the Patreon community and got really great feedback from it. So I figured that it would be a great one to share with you guys because it was super simple to make. So I used reclaimed wood for this just because I love reclaimed wood, but you can use whatever material that you have, or you can simply use 1x4 material. And just like a crate, everything in this build is designed around the same size slats. And I decided that the best look for this would be 3-inch slats. So anytime that I'm talking about a part for this build, just know that it's 3/4 of an inch thick by 3 inches wide. For each one of these sidewalls, I used 5 boards that were 64 inches long. I laid those out on a flat surface, and since the total depth for this build is 27 inches deep, I used equal spacing between each one of my boards until I had 27 inch from edge to edge. Once I had everything spaced out, I used 27-inch boards to actually make the rails that the basket would sit on. These are actually going to serve two different purposes. One is to obviously hold these baskets, and the other is to actually attach and hold together these side frames. So for my side panel laid flat and spaced out the way that I wanted it, I took the 27-inch boards, placed these going across my slats at 5 inches, 21 inches, 37 inches, and 53 inches. This would allow me the perfect spacing for my baskets. Now keep in mind, everything that I've told you so far, you can pretty much use for any size basket. The only difference that you may run into is the length of the basket. You may actually have to shorten this up. The sidewall construction will be the same. And whenever I'm talking about shortening this up, that's going to be your bottom and top braces. And we'll get into those here in a minute. Once I had all of my 27-inch horizontal boards where I wanted those, I attached them to the vertical boards using wood glue and 1 1/4 screws. And then you just repeat that for your second side. Now let's get into the spacing part. For the baskets that I had, I needed about 28.5 inches of space. So that's going to be measuring across the entire basket. So in order to get that, since I'm using 3/4 of an inch material for my sides, I cut the length of my top boards at 30 inches to make sure to overlap each side. And since each side is made up of 5 vertical boards, you're going to need 5 of the 30-inch top boards. Now that you have your top boards, we're just installing these using a butt joint. So with my 2 side panels standing up, I just put these right on top of each one of my matching vertical boards and attach those using wood glue and screws. So at this point, we have our 2 sides and our top put together. Then for the bottom of this crate, I wanted the vertical boards to go all the way to the floor. So I inset my bottom boards. And to do that, I just cut 5 boards that were 28.5 inches long, put pocket holes on each end, and installed those with pocket hole screws. Now we have the 4 outer sides of this thing made. For the back, you could run boards going all the way down, but since there were going to be baskets in this covering this most of the time, I just ran 3 30-inch horizontal support boards just to help to support the shape of this. Put one of those at the very bottom, one even with the very top, and one in the middle. Then the only thing left to do would be to add the 2 front boards. If you notice, I put one at the very bottom. Again, this is just to help to tie everything together, and one at the very top. I actually lasered that one with a little laundry saying. If you don't have a laser, you could use a stencil or just leave it rustic. But each one of those boards are 30 inches long, and I installed those again using wood glue and screws. And that's it. The basket holders that I've seen out there that aren't near this unique are selling for a ton of money. So if you want to get into more of a medium-sized build, guarantee you that this one will be a moneymaker. So this next one kind of confused me a little bit at first whenever I saw it on the bestseller list, until I took a closer look and figured out that a 30-cent add-on put it there. And that's going to be this organizer. So they just labeled this as an organizer because it can actually be used for several different things. You can put it beside your front door for keys, glasses, things like that, or you could use it on a nightstand for jewelry or anything else. But basically it's made to organize things, and people love organization. Whether they're organized or not, they would love to be. So that's why they're getting $40 out of this thing that you could probably make for couple bucks. Again, whenever I first saw this, I was like, there's something about it that I'm not liking. What I'm not liking is that they've used a different type of wood for the base than they did the arm. Honestly, they probably made a bunch of these little wooden base trays, tried to sell those, they didn't sell, threw an arm on this thing, sold like crazy. I can't tell you that that's what happened for sure, but it sounds like something that I would do. Just not use different types of wood. Well, let's get past that and let me tell you a super simple way to make this. So let's start with the base of this thing. It's 6 inches by 12 inches by 1.5 inches deep, and essentially it's a box with a little divider. To make this box, you'll need 2 boards that are 12 inches long, about 1.5 inches wide. Really, the width of this is only going to change the depth, so I'll leave that part up to you. But for this breakdown, we're going to say that everything's 1.5 inches. So you have your 2 12-inch boards, 45-degree angles on each side. Then you're going to need 2 6-inch boards with 45-degree angles on each side. Now, before you actually glue these corners together, you need to decide if you want to put a dado on your 2 12-inch boards for this divider board. As you can see here, they've recessed this into the 12-inch boards about 1/4 inch. So if you want to do that, you just measure down about 5 inches on the inside of each one of your 12-inch boards, and then cut dados about 1/4 inch deep, matching the thickness of your material. If you don't have a dado blade and you still want this inset look, you can also do this with a depth stop on your miter saw, or even setting a circular saw to 1/4 inch. But if it were me, just to keep things simple, I would just use a butt joint. And to do that, you would just use the same 1.5 inch material, measure the space on the insides of your box, and cut it to that length. Now you can assemble this frame. The only thing left to do is to put a bottom on this. And again, there's a couple of different ways that you can do this. You could actually take a router, cut a rabbet on the inside of all of this, and set a piece of wood into this frame. Or you could take a piece of 1/4 inch plywood and just install that onto the bottom. Now personally, what I think the best look for this would be use a 1/4 inch plywood, and then in the bottom of all 4 of my side parts, I cut 1/4 inch grooves in each one of my parts on the table saw. That way, whenever you assemble all of this together around your plywood, it actually insets in and gives it a really nice look. The only thing that you would have to change if you decided to do that would be the depth of this divider board. But regardless of how you put the bottom in, everything's together and we need to make this little arm. Since this whole thing is 10 inches tall, we're going to need a board that is 10 inches long, and that's going to be our vertical board. And then if you're using 1.5 inch material, we're going to need an 8.5 inch board to connect to it, which will be this horizontal board. They've used a butt joint for this, covered with a piece of hardware. But honestly, if it were me, just take a 10 inch board, a 12-inch board, and put 45-degree angles on each one. Just put this together with some wood glue, drop in some brad nails from the top just to hold this together until the glue dries. Now for the 30-cent bracket that I think is the reason why it made the bestseller list. These little things here. All that they are is 90-degree brackets that you can pick up on Amazon for dirt cheap. Again, like I said, I found these for 30 cents each. Then as far as the hooks go, again, hit up Amazon, get packs of these things for next to nothing. And the only thing left to do is to attach the arm to the box. And as you can see by this picture, all that they did is pre-drill and install this with some screws from the back. All in all, this is a super easy build, and I can see where it can come in super handy, especially around a door. As far as the pricing of $40 goes, I would actually keep that pricing. This thing would make a nice gift, and $40 for a custom-made gift, it's hard to beat. And if you're enjoying this video, make sure to click the thumbs up below and support the channel. And if you're a part of the over 60% of the people that are watching this video that's not subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe button and show your support. In one of the previous videos, we hit on risers, and during my research, I came across this. So these are 3-tier nesting risers that they're wanting $50 for a set. When I first saw these, I was like, actually, that's pretty cheap. Until I saw the size. You can actually make 2 sets of these using one 1x4. So 1x4 in my area right now is $4.80. So whenever you have $2.40 in a set of these, selling them for $50 a set is bank. So for all 3 of these, they are using the same width of material. And it's going to be 3.5 inches wide. And then for the small one, it is 2 inches tall by 7.5 inches long. The medium size one is 3 inches tall by 8.5 inches long. And the largest one is 4.25 inches tall by 9.5 inches long. Now, if you add up the parts that you need for all of these, it's only 44 inches. So let's go ahead and just break down this medium one. Keep in mind that for the small and the large, the only difference is going to be the height of the legs. Small one, you'll need 2 2-inch boards. And then for the tall one, you'll need 2 4.25-inch boards. Since this medium one is 3 inches tall, we'll need 2 3-inch boards for the legs and an 8.5-inch board for the top. Now they have assembled these using a box joint, and that's probably why they're getting $50 a set for these. The box joint makes a really neat joint regardless of the type of the wood that you're using, because being able to see the end grain on the top of something creates contrast because the end grain of material will soak up more stain. If you've never cut box joints before and you have a table saw sled, there's no excuses. There's a ton of great videos out there on cutting box joints to get this look, even if you do not have a dado blade. If you do have a dado blade, it's going to make this a piece of pie. And if you do not have a sled, again, this is your homework. Build you a simple sled for your table saw. They are super easy to make, worth their weight in gold, and will unlock a ton of new features for your table saw. So if you decide to assemble these with box joints, you would just cut all of your little tabs or fingers in the ends of each one of these boards, lock and glue them together. Now let's say that you do not want to assemble these with box joints. You can just use a simple butt joint to attach these. You just line your legs up underneath, put in some wood glue and either some screws or brad nails from the top. Or you could also use pocket holes from the inside bottom and hide those screws. It's up to you. And then for the bottoms of these legs, these notches that you see here, which would actually be easier to cut before you assemble all of this. But that's all that they have done, is measured over about an inch on each side, gone up about an inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch, and cut this out with a jigsaw. You can just put your favorite stain, finish, paint, whatever that you would like on this. Throw some delicious looking cupcakes or whatever that you'd like to stage this up. Show what these risers are used for and how it creates dimension. Throw a price tag on these of 35 or 40 bucks, knowing that you only have a couple of bucks in each set, and make some money. Okay, so this next one, I've been seeing around for quite a while. I haven't put it on here yet because it almost seems too simple. But what I've noticed about these wooden books is now they're starting to show up on everyone's bestseller list. So why are these bestsellers? Well, there's a couple of different reasons why I think that they are popular. The first reason is the price. They're selling these for $18.99, so you might as well say 20 bucks. The $20 range is kind of an area that people see as expendable income. So most people don't have issues shelling out 20 bucks. Unless you're like me and you are tighter than the bark on a tree, and 20 bucks is 20 bucks. But whenever it comes to home decoration and custom built items, $20 is nothing for people to spend. So again, these things are not near as big as what they look, which makes them even cheaper to make. These are only 3.5 inches wide by 6 inches long. So again, a 1x4. And if you wanted to shorten those by just a hair, you can get 4 sets of these out of one board. So basically you're going to cut your 1x4 into 6-inch lengths, take 4 of those, knock off the edges on one side, giving it this rounded look. It's going to be representing kind of the edge of a book. Then on the very bottom board, about 2 inches in, either using your miter saw and a depth stop or your table saw like we talked about earlier, I go ahead and cut a little notch for this jute cord to actually sit in. That way that these books can actually set flat on a surface. Once you get that notch cut, go ahead and paint these 4 boards up pretty much any color that you would like. Almost all of them that I've seen so far are either solid white, and there were a couple of black ones out there with white writing. Honestly, for as cheap as you could make these, I'd have about every color that you could think of. Then as far as the wording, hit up Amazon for some 1/2-inch stencils. Now this one says welcome to our home and seems to be very popular, but you can add to this or take away from this and have it to say whatever that you want. Then I glue all 4 of those boards together, wrap this jute cord around the top, and it looks like that they've thrown in a little bit of greenery just to set this off. If you want to do that, you can pretty much take about any type of fake plant, just cut off little pieces of it and slide it in. And that's all that there is to it. Again, they're asking about 20 bucks for this. And if you're making any of your sales by setting up at markets and things like that, this one's going to be perfect. Throw about a $15 price tag on this and watch them disappear. Okay, so this next one caught my eye for a couple of different reasons. The big one, of course, is it is super easy to make. And the next thing is that it's unique. And that's this wood planter with 5 metal buckets. So as soon as I saw this, I could picture this like in a kitchen windowsill or on a porch. Obviously, this thing is made for small plants, like as you see here, these succulents. See? I'm getting better. I'm learning the fancy plant lingo. But overall, it's just a neat look, and they are wanting 60 bucks for this thing without the succulents. Now for me, I'd already have these things loaded down with those babies because they're only like $1 a piece. But you do you. Let me tell you how they make these $60 planters with $2.30 worth of wood. Okay, so these are 6 inches wide by 31 inches long by 10 inches tall. The top board is 1.5 inches thick, so obviously made out of 2x material. Then the legs look to be 1 inch wide by 1.5 inches. So if you were to take a 2x8, rip that down to 6 inches, the waist part for that would actually be perfect for these legs. And since a 2x8 in my area is $6.83, That's what I would do. So you have your material ripped down to 6 inches wide, then you would cut that at 31 inches long. Now for the holes for these buckets, since these things are tapered and you'd actually want them to sit up above that hole a little bit, if you're using a 4-inch bucket, which you can pick up for right around $1 a piece, then I would use a hole saw to cut these holes right around 3.5 inches wide. Just make sure to use equal spacing for how many ever buckets that you decide to put in this. Once you have your holes cut, then it's just cutting your material down for your legs. So if you notice on these legs, they actually angle out a little bit to add a bit of support. Piece of pie. That's all that you'll need to do is take your scrap strip from the 8-inch board and cut 4 8.5-inch legs. And it's going to look something like this. Then you're going to take this board, stand it up against your fence and your miter saw. Then that's all that we're going to do is set our miter saw for 10 degrees. We'll put this sideways up against our fence. Then you'll make a 10-degree cut on each end, leaving you with something that looks like this. You'll do the exact same thing for 4 of these and you have your 4 legs. So what about this crossbar here in the middle? For that, you'll take a 5-inch piece of your scrap wood. Then with your miter saw still set at 10 degrees, you'll cut one to look like this, where the angles tilt in towards each other. And then I would just take my 2 legs, measure up about 2 inches from the bottom, then install this cross brace looking something like that. And to install this, I just use some wood glue and brad nails. And then with your 2 leg assemblies made, I'm just going to pretend like that this is the top. It's going to set something like this. And to attach this, you can throw a couple of pocket holes here on the inside, attach it from the underneath, or you can countersink through your top into your legs. This is actually really easy to make and one of those items that by just changing up the color of the paint or to stain this or to add different levels of distressing to it, you could create a ton of different variations of this. Again, they're wanting $60 a piece for these things. If you already had the buckets in there filled with flowers, I don't think that you'd have a bit of a problem getting $50 a piece for these things. You do not have to have a fortune in tools or a giant workshop to get started in woodworking. I started off in my front yard. And getting started does not have to be expensive. You can actually pick up all the tools that you need to start building today for less than the cost of this thing. And I've put together a detailed list of those tools and where to find them for the best price. So if you'd like this free guide to essential and affordable woodworking tools, just scan this QR code in the corner, or you can head over to mytoolguide.com. So no more excuses, no more procrastinating. The maker community is awesome, and we can't wait for you to join us. And as always, I hope that you were able to take something away from this video that will help you to grow either in your shop or on a personal level by helping you to realize just how easy that some of these things are to make, and you can totally do it. Sometimes we just need a little nudge, and giving people that nudge is exactly what this channel is about. Till next time, we'll see you.